It's race time.
The Classic started in Nevada City, California, moved up to Oregon, and now it crosses the nation to Greenville, South Carolina, where they are having their 7th annual criterium. The course, a short one, 1 kilometer, 0.62 miles. They'll be making 55 laps, a total of 35 miles, and the pace promises to be fast, and it's a big field.
But maybe not as fast, Greg, from the start as the last race in Oregon. But there goes David McCook already.
David McCook goes out in front to animate this race. 1 turn in.
You know, McCook is looking for a sponsorship. He wants to be on Coors Light or Subaru Montgomery. The best way for him to make his name is by showing strong, aggressive solo riding here in Greenville.
1 downhill section. McCook leads the way. Then a sharp right-hand turn. Actually, this course is all right-hand turns. And McCook collides with the motorcycle leading him out, and he is down on the course. And here comes the field.
The other racers have told me that David McCook is reckless. He's a little bit inexperienced. But now, look at his reaction.
For McCook, it's like trying to survive the running of the bulls at Pamplona, but he is up, and he'll get back into this race.
It's the first lap for both the motorcycle and McCook, and they just misgauged each other's speed.
Well, are the other riders chasing? The pace is still fast. You see the yellow helmets of the Subaru Montgomery team up at the front. They may not be trying to lead this race, but they are staying right up in front where the action happens. We mentioned, Tim Blumenthal, that McCook will be getting back into the race. Let's explain that situation with riders being given a lap.
Greg, in criterium racing, if you have a mechanical problem, you can get up to 1 free lap, which means at the official's discretion, if they think it's warranted, they can let you sit out for a lap, take care of the problem, and in this case, Chief Official Ken Wallace gave McCook the okay. So he'll be back in the field without penalty.
On the downhill, this is the second time through that corner where McCook went down. And the field of riders stretches out a little bit. Again, in criterium racing, one way to measure the pace is to look at how thin the field is. The longer the line, the faster the pace.
But there's one other thing you can notice here, and that is Coors Light and Subaru Montgomery are not forcing the pace. They realize this is the showdown, the final, and they have to wait maybe for another 15 or 20 minutes to take control.
On a tight course like this, can anyone really get away?
Well, I doubt it. I think that with speeds at 35 or 38 miles per hour on the downhill, you're spending so much energy fighting the wind that maybe you can stay out alone for 5 or 6 or 7 seconds, but no more. One rider against the field, no chance here in Greenville.
Well, you can see right behind the leader now, you have Mike McCarthy and Roy Nickman representing Subaru Montgomery and Coors Light. They're there to pounce on anything that happens. They are controlling the race even though they're not in front.
And in criterium racing, it's crucial to be near the front. It's the best place to be to react to attacks. You can avoid crashes, and you'll also skip the bottlenecks that can put you far behind in the corners.
And every primer on criterium racing talks about the accordion effect. Watch as the field comes into the turn. It contracts. The riders in front don't have to worry about anyone slowing down in front of them. The riders in back do. Then as they come out of the turn, the field expands. It draws out. Once again, the riders in front are controlling their own pace. The riders behind have to respond to everyone around them. So it tightens and loosens, and it's a lot more work to ride at the back.
And when you look at this formation, you probably ask yourself, why doesn't somebody just come around and ride past Roberto Gaggioli of Coors Light at the front? The reason is drafting. The rider at the front of the formation is breaking the wind, and it's just much harder to be out exposed. That's why they stay behind.
The most recent event was in Portland, Oregon. It's Mayor's Cup.
Subaru's Nate Reese rejoining the field after he was given a free lap for a mechanical problem. It is still Roberto Gaggioli out in front. This is a slower lap, more like 1 minute and 30 seconds. The fastest laps have been about 1:12 for 0.62 miles a kilometer. That's a very fast pace, well over 35 miles per hour. The battle resumes when we return to Greenville, South Carolina. Classic in Greenville, South Carolina. 22 laps in, 33 to go. The pace has remained fast, and it's Mike McCarthy who goes to the front for Subaru Montgomery. Now, McCarthy, remember, was the man who set the incredible pace in the next to last lap in the preceding race in Portland, Oregon. This is a man who comes from a pursuit racing background who can go very fast and very hard. He is pulling away now.
In Portland, his move came with 2 laps to go. Here, he's got 33 to go. And really, his strategy has to be to force Coors Light out of their game plan, to force Coors Light to chase, catch him, stay with him, and perhaps tire themselves out for the sprint that's almost certain to decide the victory here today.
McCarthy gets set for the uphill section. It's going to be an interesting sprint at the end of this race if it's a field that comes around this corner together. McCarthy now comes up the hill by himself, working hard.
This is a criterium, but McCarthy is riding like a time trialist, trying to squeeze every second out of this course.
Mike McCarthy's had unusual success in this sport, a bronze medalist in the 1990 World Championships. He also has an unusual background, as he told Tim Blumenthal.
Mike, you're a top bicycle racer, and you're from New York City, Manhattan Island. It doesn't seem like the two mix. How do you explain it?
Well, I think in New York there's actually a lot more history in cycling than people realize. You know, Century Road Club, the first club I rode with, has been around for 100 years. And, you know, they were really a great influence in my first, in the beginning of my career. I made a lot of right decisions and you know, spent time in Colorado Springs when I was young and, you know, had good guidance and chose to listen to the right people. And I think, you know, by making those decisions, I was able to really capitalize on my talent.
This cycling career began, as most do, on 3 wheels on the sidewalk. The transition to 2 went swiftly. Here's one New Yorker who isn't held back by his environment.
My easy days I spend in Central Park, sort of socializing with the weekend warriors or the weekday warriors, and on the days that I need to do good rides, I go towards Bear Mountain, and it's you know, beautiful training up there. There's definitely a certain part of the year that has to be spent away from Manhattan, but for me, I mean, it's got so much energy there. It's really the best place to unwind, recharge.
Once he was on the Olympic team, a guest at the White House, but now there are no free lunches. He's a professional, and he's planning his future.
Well, I think it looks like I'll be racing in Europe most of next year, and I think that's something that I need to do. I need to sort of remotivate myself, you know, with a real new challenge. I'm not saying that I'm on top of U.S. racing, but I think to have a whole new arena to practice my talent in will be something to sort of give me a kick in the pants and you know, and let me develop to the next level. It's I mean, I'm going over there and expecting to really learn a lot and to have my eyes open quite a bit. But I think it's going to make me a better bike rider.
Well, whether it's Manhattan or Greenville or the streets of Paris, Mike McCarthy is a star on the road. And after several laps leading this field, well, he's been rejoined. It was an outburst of speed that no one could sustain.
But it produced a reaction, and you can see that the field is split apart some, with new players at the front. That red jersey of IME Bola, we haven't seen that this whole race.
Nonetheless, Coors Light riders and Subaru Montgomery riders always near the front.
But a much different feeling, Greg, than the end of the Portland race. Here, there's no pattern, no one rider, no one team that's really putting the hurt on the rest. I think everybody is tentative, waiting for the conclusion.
Roy Nickman, he's the man in front. Riding for Coors Light, a great one-day rider, has brought a lot of strength to the Coors Light team in the longer stage races.
And there's a perfect example of an attack that went nowhere. You saw that formation at the front just come apart. It means that no one is willing to make the commitment to work to shape a breakaway. Look at the front is just disorganized. Nobody wants to control this race.
On each lap, these racers go by their team directors. What kind of advice might they be getting, or are they getting any advice at all?
They're probably getting advice that says patience. Stay near the front. Watch for attacks, but conserve your energy, because to win this race, it's going to take a short burst near the end. 1 30-second all-out effort. Don't waste your energy now. And that's the coaching advice for Coors Light or Subaru Montgomery. But for local riders, now at mid-race, this is the chance for exposure. It's almost like the Tour de France, where sometimes the peloton will let the local rider go ahead to get the cheers from his hometown crowd. They'll do the same here, but maybe only for a lap.
A crowd approaching 20,000 gathering here in Greenville, South Carolina, watching the riders, and the riders watching each other. I noticed, Tim Blumenthal, that the Subaru Montgomery riders, let's see the speed here, 35 miles per hour, so it's about 1 minute and 15 seconds per 1 kilometer lap. But I noticed the riders are always looking back over their shoulder. They're not just watching ahead, they're watching behind. What are they looking for?
They're looking for an attack, and the best place to launch an attack without being noticed is from 15th or 20th position in the bunch. That way you can avoid detection. If you attack from the front, everybody sees.
Well, David McCook attacks from the front. The man who collided with a motorcycle on turn 3 of this race is back out in front again.
And he's ultra slim, fast, and filled with adrenaline after that early crash.
And another $100 will go to win this race next lap. Back-to-back $100.
But McCook slows down after he reaches the summit of this course, and the field is animated by another racer.
And actually, that's one of McCook's teammates. And that's the way the criterium racing goes. One racer from a team attacks, and when he gets tired, another attacks.
But notice Roy Nickman of Coors Light right up there to monitor all the proceedings.
This is a defensive game.
Well, you hear the analogy all the time that it's like chess on wheels. Everybody measuring their moves, planning well ahead.
And you can see that the light is changing. We have shadows on the course now that makes the corners tougher.
Up the final hill, a dress rehearsal for what will be the conclusive and decisive sprint. This time it is won by Steve McGregor. Who will it be when we return to Greenville, South Carolina? Getting ready for the conclusion of this Subaru Classic Criterium. And this is a Dutch rider out in front, Bertus Kroon, and it's the kind of race the Dutch ride well. 3 laps to go.
Well, yes, in Holland they call them kermesses. And the move to make in a kermesse to win is in a solo attack with a couple laps to go. But here it's not going to work. As you can see, the yellow bikes of Coors Light, 1, 2, 3, now taking control of this race.
Right at the front, it's Roy Nickman. Davis Finney, one of the all-time great sprinters, a winner of over 300 races, is in second. And then Roberto Gaggioli is right there in third. The question is, where would Chris Huber be right now, the man who won the first race in this series with a great sprint?
Well, for someone like Davis Finney, he can almost do this on autopilot. You get near the end of a criterium, you take the pace up high, you don't let anybody come around, and what you do is you give a lead out to Chris Huber so he can win the sprint and put an exclamation point on his command of the Subaru Classic.
All right, here comes our... They'll come up this hill just 2 more times after this one. It's Roy Nickman still setting the pace.
And you can see Coors Light all the way across the front. This is team tactic cycling at its best.
A field sprint here will be like a land rush in Oklahoma. It's going to be crowded, fast, and dangerous. And it appears that no one is going to be able to break away from Coors Light. They're going just too fast. It's Steven Swart out in front for Coors Light. Right behind him, Subaru Montgomery rider looks like Mike McCarthy. What would Subaru Montgomery's plan be now?
Well, McCarthy would try to force the pace, if possible, get to the front and set things up for Nate Reese or Steve Hegg, their 2 best finishers in this field.
On the downhill section now. The field is tight. It looks like we are definitely going to have a field sprint. They're going to have one more time to practice this march up the hill toward the finish line. This is it.
One to go. And a top sprinter can only maintain peak velocity for about 40 revolutions of the pedals. That's about 200 meters, and they're trying it out now for one last dry run.
I see a whole bunch of student athletes.
Well, the stoplight says green, and that's what it is. It's a green ticket to go as fast as you can in this final lap.
And that's Davis Finney right on the yellow line, taking control with Roberto Gaglioli, his teammate, Chris Huber just behind. This is a perfectly set up Coors Light strategy.
Finney looks behind. Gaglioli set to do his work. Huber set to take the glory.
And Huber is protected. He hasn't been exposed to the wind. He doesn't have to do anything but save his effort. And now some riders trying to force their way up the left side of the road and break up Finney's domination, but they can't do it. Finney is too fast.
And we see the yellow helmets of Subaru Montgomery. McCarthy is right there. This short straightaway. Then it'll be the final hill.
200 meters to go, and Coors Light has lost its domination.
The racers spread out across the course. The final sprint is on. Steve McGregor on the far left. Huber in the middle. On the right, Gary Coltman trying to get by Huber. He raises his hand. Some kind of protest. Huber raises his hand. He says, I got it. I won this one too. Huber takes race number 3. He won the first one. Coors Light holds on.
Subaru Series and the final
Coors Light perfectly executed strategy into the last turn, but then it seemed to fall apart. Huber pulled it back together for the sprint victory. And Huber, on the far right of your screen, it doesn't seem as if he even sees McGregor on the top, but it's victory by half a bike length.
So a contented Chris Huber, Subaru Montgomery, lost out in that stampede up the hill to the finish line. And stampede is what it was. This is Cheyenne Frontier days as they come to the narrowing finish line. Second from the right, it is Chris Huber. Next to him, Gary Coltman. Looks like he is unhappy with how the course narrowed in front of him. On the far left, Steve McGregor. He just didn't have the muscle to beat Huber. And now, Tim Blumenthal's with our winner.
Chris, what was your strategy in the final lap?
Coming in the last corner, you're never sure of anything. You're kind of, there's a lot of jockeying, and a couple of Subaru guys came by just on the inside of the last corner, and you're a little bit nervous, like there might be a crash because, there's so much at stake that everyone's just going crazy. But I got right on the Subaru guy and accelerated off of him, and that was it. As soon as I was coming up the straight, I saw I was sprinting against one other guy, and looked like he had me by a couple inches. I just, gritted my teeth, went as hard as I could, and looked over at the line, and I got him. So it felt great to win the race.
If Chris Huber's the picture of joy, Gary Coltman is the picture of disappointment. He has filed a protest. He believes that Huber cut him off coming up to the finish line. Now, the referees, the officials are conferring, checking the videotape. The answer when we return.
Sprinting on my bike like this.
But you're also going to the left. I mean, anyone can sound
The temperature's high at this meeting. Chris Huber on the far left thinks he's won. Ken Wallace, the referee, trying to make a decision. Gary Coltman, who is still waging his protest with full fervor.
I've never tried to pass anybody there.
Well, here's the action they're reviewing, a blown-up version. Look at the two riders on the far right. It's Gary Coltman next to the fence. Next to him, Chris Huber. Coltman's hand goes up. That's where he feels that he was forced out of room. And the officials agree. Let's go to Tim Blumenthal. Tim?
Ken Wallace, you're the chief official. How did you make your decision?
Well, we were lucky enough to have some very good film from ESPN that allowed us to see pretty clearly that Huber moved over from near the middle of the road to the edge and shut Gary Coltman out in the sprint. Coltman was starting to come around him, had no place to go, and was forced to stop his sprint.
The main beneficiary of this decision, the man on the far left here, Steve McGregor, now the winner of this race. The big loser coming into view on the right, it is Chris Huber. Huber is knocked down to fourth. Tim Blumenthal's with McGregor for his opinion.
Now, you had maybe even a better perspective than any of the videotape cameras on the finish. Describe what you saw.
Well, I didn't see a whole lot, but what I could tell was that Chris Huber and I were coming up the line pretty close together, side by side, and the next thing I knew, he seemed to be drifting to the outside of the course. And at the same time, I happened to see the protest, so I knew that Chris Huber had moved over. So that must have been what happened.
So, in your sense, the decision was justified?
Yeah, in my opinion, it was. It doesn't matter who the rider is. If it comes down to the last 200 meters, you're not supposed to move your line. And if the judges catch it, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's just the way it goes.
Well, here are the revised standings. Steve McGregor moves to the top, and Chris Huber moves down to number 4. How does he feel about this? He's with Tim Blumenthal.
Chris, a few minutes ago we were here celebrating your victory, not only in the series, but today. Now it's been taken away. What do you feel?
Well, I feel like the guy who made the protest was mistaken. And when you look at the film, it's a little hard to draw a conclusion because the roadway comes in, and naturally there's no room for him to pass. And I just feel like I won the race here today. And the Coors Light team did a great job, protecting my lead both in the series and for me to win the race here today. And I think it's a bad decision on the commissary's fault.
But it's not all bad news for Huber. He is the points leader in the 3-race Subaru Cycling Classic and the overall individual champion. The team title goes to Subaru Montgomery, and Nate Reese will get to drive away the car after all. A replay deciding it all in Greenville, South Carolina. For Tim Blumenthal, I'm Greg Lewis. Goodbye from the Subaru Cycling Classic.